35 and 70 millimeter film, as well as 4K digital projection, live events, a screen built for people who actually love movies, in a historic downtown theater that's been dark for years and it's finally coming back to life. On today's episode of If You Didn't Know, I'm sitting down with Jason Reimer, filmmaker, musician, co-founder of the Oak Cliff Film Festival, and creative director of Dallas's iconic Texas Theater. And he's the guy behind the Fine Arts Theater Revival. Denton's got it all: the food, the music, the art, and of course the people. And behind every corner, there's a story worth sharing. And that's what this podcast is all about. Denton's best, one conversation at a time. I'm Brad, and this is If You Didn't Know, Now You Know. Welcome back to another episode of If You Didn't Know. I'm really excited to have Jason Reimer here. Jason,
I'm excited to be here.
Welcome to the studio right here downtown Denton.
I think it's great.
You love Denton, but
I love it.
Spending a lot of time in Dallas right now, but more and more time in Denton, right?
Yeah. I spent a decade here before that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to unpack all that. But Jason, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
Everybody is, we've been kind of talking. It seems like in previous episodes of the podcast here, fine arts comes up about every other show.
Really?
One way or another. It's like,
I love that.
Yeah. So, and I'm telling you, in the community in general, there's just a lot of excitement.
That's good to hear.
Project. So
I hope so.
Yeah. Of course. Well, kind of like I said in the intro, you just a little bio. Musician, filmmaker, producer. You've done music, film, and live performance. Early recording projects to composing film scores and directing music videos. So you've been kind of doing it all, and you started the Oak Cliff Film Festival as well, right?
Yeah, Oak Cliff Film Festival started after we did the theater. So, I started doing, when we moved there to Oak Cliff, all those things are true. Those multi-hyphenates, sometimes I just say I'm just a guitarist. Like at the end of the day, I was a musician that, an artist that do all kinds of art. Like many artists, you end up with odd jobs paying the gigs over the years.
Yeah.
So, I bartended and did all kinds of things, waited tables. And I've done every job you can think of. And when I was here in Denton, I worked at Rubber Gloves and Dan's when it first, Dan's, when it became the Silverleaf, I was literally the first bartender that Dan hired. He lived a couple doors down from me. But, when you're a musician and an artist, like you end up picking up a lot of habits and tasks and jobs and skill sets, and some of them stick and some of them don't. But I'd gotten into production, set design through a bunch of musician friends. So I was working in Dallas a lot.
I see.
And commuting to Dallas a ton. So for about 6 years roughly, I was doing that commute most of the month. It was pretty horrible.
Let me just get down there.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. So this is pre-podcast world, so it was a long drive,
Yeah.
And I had moved here because my wife was finishing art school and getting her master's here, and I'd only planned on being in Denton for a couple of weeks, and I was here for 9 years.
I can't tell you how many episodes people are like, "Oh, I came here for school," or "I came here just thinking it would be this," and they're like, "I'm stuck here."
It's real sticky, you know. And for an artist, I have a weird fact about that I did not know until many years later. But when I was about 18, I'd already been out of the house and kind of wandered and had my wander years for a couple of months or a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I came back to outside Chicago where I lived, and I was working at this restaurant. I had decided I'm going to go to a music school. And I had applied to a bunch of schools and kind of forgot about it.
Yeah.
None of them worked out for any number of reasons. And many years later, when I was living in Oak Cliff, we'd already moved to Oak Cliff, I was looking through old files and getting rid of stuff, and I found an application to UNT.
Yeah.
From when I was 17 or 18 years old.
Yeah.
Which I was like, it was just a weird connection of like, how in the world
to go there? Yeah.
Would I have, because I just didn't connect the two in my memory that I'd never, grown up in the suburbs of Chicago, and Texas was not on the radar much, but when you're in creative world, you're at the whim of what your luck is,
Yeah.
So I was just looking to perform and be in bands and do artistic stuff, like I'd artistic mind wasn't well suited for the office, you know. So by the time I was doing that production work and going to Dallas, you know, you're making just enough money where it's serious, but you're not taking home the work with you. You know,
Right.
you're painting sets, and it's kind of cool. It's like a pirate atmosphere in
Mhm.
a way. Like lots of musicians do it, which was great. You could take off when you wanted. So it's
Yeah.
kind of being freelance was a lot of fun in lots of ways. During that time, though, the Texas theater, there was a mutual friend of mine through some musician friends where when I'd moved to Oak Cliff after all that commuting, we got sick of commuting and moved to Oak Cliff. I didn't want to leave Denton at all, kicking and screaming. I was dragged out.
Well, before we get to, so tell me this, how'd you got from Chicago to Denton, or why?
The shortest version of a really long, boring story for you guys, but I went from Chicago to California.
Okay.
When you grew up in Chicago in the 80s and 90s, like you wanted to live in a Van Halen music video, you know, like you just thought that's what you should live in.
Yeah.
We're used to ice and snow. So I went immediately out to California. And then I had a friend who'd been in that high school situation I had in the suburbs who was from Texas.
Okay.
And he had invited me to visit Texas. And I came in 91, stayed for like a year or so, then went back to the suburbs. That's when I was doing those restaurant jobs, whatever.
I see.
And there's just something sticky about Texas. Like the people were on my mind. I'd met a lot of friends in the short time I was here. So I ended up coming back in the late 90s.
Okay.
And
Denton
then
is where you landed.
no, I landed in Dallas first,
Okay.
and I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
So I at that time was 98 or so, and I just didn't feel like I fit in there. And everything I read about was Denton.
Okay.
It was like cooler art stuff or things that I was interested in.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was always in Denton.
Okay.
So at that time, I'd met Kristen, who's now my wife,
Yeah.
and she was going to school here.
Okay.
So she was in the art program here, which was really, really a great art program at that time. So I ended up coming up here to live with her. I thought just till she graduated school, and that was in 99, 2000, and I stayed for almost a decade because I just fell into all this artistic community, and like it just felt like it was a glove that fit for me artistically.
That's awesome. Well, I think we need more of your kind here. So
I think you've got so many, you know, like
no, we do.
Yeah, like that was what
we're welcome as many more as when it comes. So
I think the beacon's out there,
you
know, so that's what you guys attract.
No doubt. All right, so going back, then you ended up getting more work in Dallas, and then like, okay, let me move down here. And so when did the Texas theater come in?
So at that time, I mean, ironically, for my story with the fine arts in the coming future, at that time I'd already been trying to do something with the fine arts.
Yeah,
there was a group of us. There was a festival called 35 Denton that had existed, and I'd helped Chris and the guys that organized that had wanted someone to help organize that event at the theater. So I'd already kind of gotten my eye in the theater in like the mid 2000s, but I could never get inroads. And none of us, I mean, there's hundreds of people that wanted to do stuff with theaters.
Right. People
drive by old theaters all the time. And they say, well, how do I get involved? So I was like lots of those people. And Martin Isles, a friend of mine who's long art history in Denton, he was doing some art thing or some film things at Dan Silverleaf where I worked. And we had kind of gone around to fine arts and tried to do something just on one day a week there. And it just never got through for whatever reason. So by the time I moved to Oak Cliff, 2008, 2009, I wasn't looking for a theater per se, but when I went, I just had all my gear and I needed somewhere to put it. And through a music friend of mine, Stuart Sykes, he has so many very happy accents of Stuart Sykes coming into this. He was on the board of the theater, unbeknownst to me, of the group called the Oak Cliff Foundation that had saved the theater from being torn down. Okay. And they were looking for ways to get it open again. I didn't know any of this when I met Stuart. Right. But Stuart and I ended up renting a space for my music gear because he's a music producer. And on the way to go sign the deed to the rent for that lease, we drove by the Texas Theater. I said, what's the deal with that place? Like, because my small backstory, my wife and I, Kristen, we had done lots of art shows here in Denton when we lived here. We'd done kind of one-off art nights that were similar to what the Good Bad had done and other art collectives had done in Denton. We did lots of music shows at Dan's and lots of things at our house. We made our house into a gallery. Yeah. So on one night events for 24 hours, we'd be this multi-use gallery space, So that's honestly what started my interest in the Texas theater. We were driving by it, and I was asking Stuart, like, what's the deal with this theater? And he got this big grin. He's like, I'm on the board that owns it. And I was like, "You what?" Like, so we literally at Jefferson and Zhang, he did a U-turn. He's like, "You want to see it?" And I was like, "Let's do it." So in 2 seconds, I'm inside this building that's been empty for 2 decades.
Right.
And
they had restored it at this point though, or done some
mostly
restoration work. Yeah.
They'd restored the lots of the plumbing and things like that. They were trying to get a CO to be ready for someone to operate it and use it.
But they didn't know who that was gonna be.
No,
at that point.
they'd been trying. There'd been multiple organizations they tried to woo to come over.
Their primary interest was just preserving it, kind of restoring it, saying somebody come do something here.
Yeah, and this is obviously if you know this now more than most, like there was a group similar to what we're finding out now where real estate people, community leaders, people that were involved in Oak Cliff had bound together in this foundation, mostly just to protect it from being torn down. And they did raise money, and they did a lot of things to get it kind of back up on its legs again, to be ready for an operator to come in. They had not been able to find an operator. So just by luck of that spot in the story, Stuart, just said, "Do you want to be involved?" And I had already done hundreds of events when I lived in Denton. So I was like, absolutely. Like, what can I do? And they were just on the end of their existence with it, where they were tired. They'd been asking for money for years, and that things had started and stopped and not worked out. So I was full of energy for it.
Yeah.
So they said, come to a board meeting. A week later, I'm on the board. They said, what is your role? I said, I guess I'm, what about creative director? Because I wanted to just be able to do events. Yeah. And kind of rebrand it, because it'd been kind of dormant. So that was my first involvement, was to help that board kind of just treat it like a band is what I always thought of it like, and that's worked out. But, I knew how to promote that type of artistic culture. Mm-hmm. So I called in every favor of any friend I'd ever known ever. Because I wasn't from Oak Cliff, and I wasn't from Dallas. Yeah. I wasn't embedded in the Dallas culture at all. Mm-hmm. So I was really, in a way, I feel like in retrospect, that worked to my advantage. Yeah. Because I wasn't involved in any previous things that might have jaded
you in any way. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was 2009, roughly going into 2010. I started doing free events at the Texas Theater to kind of get it attention. And that's kind of
now,
what started.
15, 16, whatever years later, it seems so obvious that that's what it should be.
It's
like, how did nobody else,
Oh, lots of people tried.
Lots of people tried, but you had the magic sauce there.
I don't, it's easy for, the thing that I have, and I do accredit Denton to a lot of that. Like, I'm just a community person. Yeah. I don't think it's easy for, can I sit here and go, I did this and I did this and I did whatever, that stuff is, I don't think that serves the purpose. Right. I don't feel like that's my role, to be like, these are all things that I did and everyone should point at me. It really is a group effort of the people that were involved in the foundation and people that are lending their time. And you're learning along the way of how to do these things from people that have tried it before. And in many cases failed. Yeah. And learn from what didn't work out about it. So I feel a little weird about years in pretend like there was some, master vision that we just totally knew, because we didn't. We had the ability to experiment, which was the main thing.
Well, and I think you hit on it. I think your strategy is really, I don't know what I'm going to do exactly here, but I'm going to let the community kind of tell me what they want, right?
Yeah, and that's like, I learned that from places I worked. Yeah. Some working in Rubber Gloves and working with Dan Mojica. Dan Mojica has more to be involved in this theoretically, philosophically, than he'll probably ever know. Mm-hmm. Because I was influenced by these people, people that had done things that were like that I admired. That were, how do you do something that's important to a whole community? That seemed like a huge task, Right. But if you don't look at it like this giant thing, because really no one cared what I was doing in the beginning. Yeah. It wasn't open, and it had been closed for so long that people were like, what? Who even knows what that is? You know,
Whatever. Yeah.
it was always JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
And I just didn't, in the beginning, I really wanted to focus on, it's an empty room, you know, and because I'm from, you know, Chicago area and places like that, we have lots of history that's not always great. You know, there's things about Chicago, there's gangster violence and things that have happened in the Al Capone days or whatever, you know, but in our world, you don't tear down buildings because they were part of history.
Right.
So I do feel strongly about that.
Yeah.
I do feel strongly about preserving history, and I do feel strongly about architecture,
Yeah.
because I think these buildings possess a power that is underexploited, you know, by cities in general.
I totally agree. I think that, I mean, there's a lot of what you're going to do, the events and what actually happens within those walls that is going to draw people in, but the building itself, the fact that it is, you know, as old as it is, that it was a theater for nearly 100 years now. I mean, that's going to bring people in.
Yeah, I hate to sound like hippy dippy about it, but there is a thing to me.
Yeah.
There is a thing about the soul of a place that I travel, you know, we travel a lot, and you go to places that have a long history, and it does feel different. I do think the cells of things get in there. So I think the Texas Theater, to me, I felt like my job was to protect that.
Yeah.
And to highlight that, and to find other people that felt that way. And then figure out what skill set I didn't have, you know, and then, you know, lucky I met Barack. You know, he had been up here at school in UNT looking for a way to do a theater, and just completely by chance again, we ran into each other because I was doing events. He heard about one of the events. He kind of reached out, and it was like instant. We see the same thing. Yeah. We kind of agreed on where it was going. It was like, hey, just keep doing what you're doing. Let's make that a business. I can figure out this I didn't know anything about projection.
Yeah.
I knew about AV stuff and music stuff, but I didn't know anything about projectors or any of that. So he knew that stuff.
Yeah.
So we offset each other's skill set perfectly.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hope I can speak for him in that sense. Like, I was trusted to keep the ball and keep going.
Right.
You know, and keep hitting those community notes. And I really want to get as many curators and community people in the building and give them some kind of platform. And then my job was just kind of to make it make sense to like a first-time viewer or someone in the public, you know, to make it have meaning that felt like a collaborative effort. You know?
So I mean, down there you still hold the title of creative director, right?
Yeah.
But you've got a big team of other people that are kind of running a lot more of probably the day-to-day stuff at this point.
Yes. Operation crew, and that's always shifting and growing. We just added someone new just this last handful of months. I have a new guy named Lewis that we just brought on. We've our guy Ashland's been with us for about a decade now. I mean, people are the same way I was attracted to it. Yeah. People get attracted to it, and they kind of, you know, some of them want to be more involved. The Oak Cliff Film Festival is an example of how much the community and the volunteers really make it occur, because there's no money involved. Yeah. You don't get paid to do a festival. Right. You know, so those two things were a dynamic combustion. Yeah. You know.
Cool. Well, so you rocking along there in 2000. I guess we met in 2018.
Yeah.
When Axis Realty was hired to sell the fine arts.
Yeah.
You know, at that time, and the McBride family, I love to give them credit, because I mean, you know, the building, when we'd show it, I mean, if it was raining outside, it was raining inside. Basically, I mean, the roof was shot. It was really in some serious disrepair. But I love to give them credit for the fact that it still had that facade. I mean, they didn't let it change. You know, so much happened in the 70s and 80s. It's like, all right, let's throw up a concrete, you know, whatever facade on this thing, and get rid of all that stuff. You know?
And everybody, to give them even more context, like, it's a really common occurrence of how that worked. Yeah. Like the arc of a theater struggling to figure out what to play and trying to change up whatever they are to get new people in there. That's a really common problem for theaters like that. So in 2026 now, to have access to a building that you can restore is really special, because it's, you know, many people I'm sure might be like, well, why didn't they do this or that? but they don't. Anyone that hasn't been behind those doors trying to figure out how to make any money from these buildings, they don't really know how hard it is for anyone to figure out, okay, we make it $1 a theater. Do we show this? Do we show that?
Yeah.
All those things are really tough to figure out. So it's really unfair to point to any era. They're just trying to do the best they can with the playing field they have. And once you get behind the 8 ball of the repairs, man, it's tough to dig out of that.
It is.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
So they did their best they could.
And after the fire in there in the early 80s, I mean, really, if you think back, it changed from Texas Theater. I mean, a lot of people may not realize this.
Crazy.
Denton's Fine Arts Theater was originally a Texas Theater, right? But changed in 57 to Fine Arts, was rebranded as Fine Arts. And 25 years later, basically, there was this fire in kind of that mezzanine area that you know, kind of threw off everything that was going on there. But to think that it's only 25, I mean, this brand, this Fine Arts, I mean, we think of it now, it's so iconic and it's so culturally important to what Denton is. I mean, if you Google Denton, you know, just Denton, Texas, one of the first images that comes up, you know, of course, the courthouse, but also Fine Arts is one, and, you know, the Morrison building, those kind of buildings, it's one of those. But it was only 25 years old at that point. So it was like, that's not that historic. Maybe we should just do something else. But they didn't. And so, again, it gives us an opportunity to do something.
And they can, usually these buildings become churches very often.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they become Walgreens. And I was at I went to one in Italy that's a grocery store now in Venice. So they very often become other stuff. And you can see the remnants of them architecturally. But to hold on to it and really believe that at some point it'll work out, you know, it does take some fortitude, you know.
Well, and I think Denton's been fortunate to have the campus theater. I mean, it's not on the square, but the campus theater, you know, gives us some hope of being able to have, you know, more real estate and more opportunities like that. It's like, oh, this is what it's been for a very long time. Let's keep it going. We need to repurpose it. Come up with kind of an adaptive reuse, so to speak, but let's keep it going.
There used to be about 7 that I'm aware of on the square.
Right.
So the campus is awesome. The fact that you have one around the corner from the Fine Arts is a great addition to the community. And the more the merrier, you know? People always think not everyone, but people that they assume there's some competition between theaters, like us and Alamo or something like that, but there's really not.
Yeah.
Like we're all kind of rooting for each other. And more options is good for any community. Yeah.
So again, back to 2018, as we were showing the space a lot, and there was a lot of interest. I mean, this was one of those kind of real estate brokerage projects you get on that's like the news wants to talk about it. You know, it's not just some random building down the street here. That
was a big deal. It was a big deal for y'all.
Yeah, it definitely was. You know, and so it was a really neat assignment for us to work on, and we were honored to kind of be a part of it. But I remember showing the building to you guys, you and Barack. Y'all came up and you're like, "Well, we've been looking at this for years, and we'd love to do something."
I had looked at it for years. Like I'd been to it since about 2015 or so, because there were moments when folks from the McBride family had heard about Texas theater, and because of my history in Denton and with that theater specifically, you know, and Barack went to UNT too, so we were always keen. People sometimes call other theaters and say, "Hey, we're thinking about doing one in Minnesota or whatever." And we're always, sure, come on, we'll show you what we can show you and tell you what we can. We're certainly, you know, hoping you get it going. You know, so I'd looked at it over the years many times since 2015-ish or so, influx of some version of reopening or selling. So by the time you guys got it, I was already a little worried about the ceiling, all the things that was coming in. I was like, it's going to get worse, you know, because the roof was so gone. But I did love that you guys were enthusiastic. Like that was the first good sign is that I could tell you guys weren't just representing another property. It felt like you guys really cared about who got it. Right. You know, and they're not easy to sell. You know, well,
and more than just us, the community cared. You know, a lot. We heard from a lot of people. It's like, well, make sure they do something cool with it. Like, well, we're going to try, you know, first of all, somebody's got to be willing to buy it. And then we can start, you know, eliminating and saying, okay, this would be the coolest use or the best use for it. So to me though, is we talked to a lot of different prospects for that building, it kept coming back to you and Brock, like, y'all are the right ones
Yeah.
to operate it, to have control of this property.
I think we got lucky. I think Brock and I got lucky in that aspect that, you know, Texas Theater became our proof of concept.
Yep.
That it worked enough that we could say, okay, we've been doing this at that time, you know, almost a decade.
10 years, yeah.
You know? And we could say, like, look, we've been through these different avenues, but really the combination of our two talents, meaning I had a live music background, he was from, you know, movie theaters, those two things combined seems to really be a good dynamic for these types of theaters. So at least we had a business plan that we could show to a realtor or an investor or whomever want to be involved and say, well, here's the actual math of what these things do. Here's what they can't do.
Yeah.
Because people do get ideas that they're somehow worth millions and millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
It's understandable. And in a way, that's the perception of that is how much people value those buildings,
Mm-hmm.
because they think, well, that must be worth millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
When in fact, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Like very often it's the restoration of the chairs or the ceiling or the roof or whatever that just is knocking you in the hole before you even begin.
Mm-hmm.
So we could at least show some idea from the Texas Theater, and we could take you guys down there and say, well, this is what it looks like, and it looked like this before, and give you some idea of what it could look like.
Yeah.
So you could at least feel comfortable in what the path might be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, still letting you guys have the availability to alter that.
Right.
You know, because I really didn't want to force what we had done down anyone's throat either.
Yeah.
You know, because I do think the community it's from, the building itself,
Right.
has to have some of its own personality.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a rubber stamp franchise.
No. Yeah.
You know?
Well, so we started talking. It was like, okay, let's do something together. Let's figure this out, and we acquired the building together. But it's like, okay, that's where the real work began, right?
Yeah.
We went in, did the asbestos and mold abatement,
So much
remediation, and pretty much had to demo everything out initially,
Yeah.
and put a new roof on. Let's get a new roof on here so that we
Start
can
with
at
the
least
roof.
kind of continue to salvage what's here. But had conversation with the city of Denton
Mhm.
fairly early in the process, and there was some momentum there. But COVID happens, everything changes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, everything changes, of
Unreal.
course, and that changed even the way you guys operate, and I think
Yes.
even the way you looked at this project, right?
Big time. COVID was, for theaters across the nation, was a huge challenge. And it put a lot of businesses like that under.
Yeah.
Because if you were in the wrong spot at the wrong time of that debt or whatever you're dealing with, it was a tough moment, And, I have to say, I think all of our collective production backgrounds, Barack, myself, and Ashton too, are all from a production background.
Mm-hmm.
So, many of us are, literally all of us, if I think about it, are involved in some aspect of production now. So it gives you it gives you some flexibility in those stressful moments. Like there's, we didn't know what to do, but we started thinking about what to do quickly.
Yeah.
Like what could we do? So the idea for the Sunset Drive-In that we did in our parking lot got us through COVID.
Yeah.
And we, ended up getting the loan to do the second balcony, which was we'd always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And we were just in a moment where we knew to do that project, we'd have to be closed, at least partially,
Mm-hmm.
upstairs anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of, I have to say we kind of turned a negative into a positive.
Mm-hmm.
So Barack and I kind of siphoned off to work on the construction of that and redesign the second floor. And then, on pretty much a daily basis, Barack, Ashton, and all the employees, we didn't lay anybody off. And they were working in the parking lot and doing, drive-ins. And I kind of calcified my feeling about these things because it was, COVID did lots of things to lots of businesses, but the undeniable truth that people wanted to be around each other,
Mm-hmm.
evidence.
Yeah.
We could show anything in that parking lot, and we can only fit about roughly 35 cars. We did a premiere, an actual first premiere of a new film in the parking lot, Promising Young Woman. So many things happened in that parking lot in those months.
Yeah.
And people were really having a good time. And some people were just like blindly, whatever film we put up, buying a ticket,
Mm-hmm.
And it really, it really kind of, I already felt the way I felt, but there felt like a sea change, before COVID into after COVID and movie feelings about cinema. To me, at least in my purview.
Yeah.
I feel like people really started to look at these theaters and the world of cinema in a different light. The talking points about whether you can stream something or not at home became like a big, kind of household topic. Like, well, I can stream it at home. Well, okay, Wonder Woman's at home, great. But, going and sitting on your car in a parking lot is just way more fun.
Yeah.
So it felt like a younger generation came out of COVID to us when we're looking at our demographics, really being feverish for cinema. So it felt like, ironically, looking back, COVID actually kind of helped the Fine Arts Project.
Yeah.
I know that seems weird to say.
Yeah.
But if we would have done it the way we wanted to do it in 2019, we would have done it differently than we're doing now. So
no, that's really, it has changed. And I mean, it made all the sense in the world to just push pause and hold off on everything. I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen, how this was going to play out, or whether it even ever makes sense to do it. But in addition to that, it certainly didn't make sense to have, more conversations with the city at that time about financial support, because they were trying to,
they're trying to figure it out too.
Yeah. It just wasn't, it wouldn't have gained any traction then. So basically 2-3 years, we just kind of sat there and was like, okay, we'll come back to this at some point. I remember having conversations like, maybe we don't. I mean, we all want to.
Yeah, I think that should be, you've heard this from me a lot, but I will continue to say when there's microphones in front of me that it is an unbelievably rare scenario that realtors and developers such as yourselves have that type of patience. Like, that's a really unique scenario, because most people would look at the math of the situation and say, no way. Yeah. So I always wanted to at least leave that on the table for you guys, meaning you guys have already put a lot of blood and sweat and lots of money into it. Yeah. So no one can complain about trying to get the ball over the line at that point and saying, you know what, crying uncle, I don't know if we can afford to keep doing this. Right. So it really is a credit to you guys that you stuck with it and looked at the project with fresh eyes when we started again. Yeah. And then we could explain that to the city. Like, people think of developers and city money as like this nefarious thing, but it really is like, this is a work of art for a city. It's like a museum. Like, this is not like just a box that people want to build. It's like, it's something that's preserving the history of Denton. The city should care about this. Yeah. So it's good that wasn't a big gap. Yeah. For them to understand that and understand y'all's passion for that was helpful.
Well, I think, when we started talking to Christine Taylor at the city, and her team is like, okay, is there a path forward? We weren't sure, really, to be honest. Like, is there going to be a path forward working with the city? We've got this gap. I mean, it's a very big project, expensive project, and it only makes sense to take on so much debt on a project like this. So it's like, without some infusion of capital from somewhere, this thing's just not going to happen. And to the city's credit, and then they were great to work with. They jumped in there and sure enough gave a grant that really bridged that gap and kind of got us off the ground. So.
And I think you're going to see other cities take notice of that. Yeah. And I know from my experience in the last year or so that we've restarted it, that people reach out about that. Yeah. How in the world did you guys pull that off? Because I think cities other than Denton should look at that as a case scenario of what's the harm. Like, there's a million things a city can invest in for infrastructure or tourism or whatever, but unequivocally, these things do encourage activity. So I think Denton should be credited for seeing that quickly in wanting. It felt overall very positive. There wasn't a lot of detractors that thought it was a bad idea. No. So I hopefully other cities take note and follow suit.
I think as it opens up and everybody kind of really sees the impact of it, I can't imagine others won't follow suit. I hope so too.
I hope so.
So paint us the picture. So we're now sometime later this year. Yeah. It opens
hopefully
up.
Summerish, laterish.
Yeah. What's the experience? What do people feel when they go in, and what are we going to be
hopefully, doing I'm always shooting for that kind of like awestruck feeling of like, whoa, that people haven't seen it. They've had in their minds, maybe if they lived here and heard about it, their parents or grandparents, whatever, that they feel like, well, you've done it right. So that we've used that if anyone has been to the theater before when it
Right.
was open, as you know, we've used that as the template,
Mm-hmm.
and then just tried to expand on what those ideas were. So the basic structure of that downstairs theater has been kept intact, and we've kind of upgraded what we can do with it. So definitely been able to do high-end digital projection, certainly doing 35 millimeter prints, and then adding 70, which it used to do.
Yeah.
So there was a time when 70 was shown in the Fine Arts Theater. So that was, again, to use that kind of DNA core to return to for the Fine Arts.
Mm-hmm.
That was important to get its identity back
Mm-hmm.
as a place to see films and be a cinematic hub for people that are into that culture. That's downstairs. And then there's an upstairs theater. It's about 50-ish, we think, that it's going to be kind of a little tighter thing that you might see in modern theaters, but it'll be a cozy like black box theater.
Yeah.
But very important to mention, we did this at the Texas Theater as well. The throw, which is like just the distance from the projector to the screen, we do a lot to figure out the ratio so
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like you're getting gypped by going upstairs.
Okay.
So the screen is almost the same size.
Wow.
So that's the idea. So that for the person that's into this kind of thing, you know, sometimes you go to theaters and they say, oh, it's an upstairs theater. And you'd be like, oh, that's the small one, you know,
Yeah.
and it's got a smaller screen or the sound is not as good. But we did this in Texas Theater. We made it about the same size screen. It's actually a little bit louder.
Yeah.
So it's all the 35s for us are upstairs. So the cinema experience upstairs, some people prefer it now.
Mm.
So we want to at least have the experience in both theaters feel like they're at the top end
Mm-hmm.
of what they can be. So we'll have 2 main spaces. And then the downstairs will be fitted for any kind of a live event, live bands, live scores, comedians, podcasts. I mean, just hundreds of things that you can think of.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure presentations and, you know, we're hoping when assuming, I guess, but we're hoping film students and
Yeah.
UNT's right there, TWU's right there. So we're hoping to have a scholastic integration into the community,
Right.
because we are going to be available to those folks to use. So in my perfect world, it's being used for so many things it's hard to count.
Mhm.
But its DNA is cinema,
Right.
with that music performance. You know, more or less half and half. You know,
Mhm.
so I think as an entertainment spot, I don't know of another one in the county or anywhere close.
Yeah.
But I'm biased. You know?
Of course.
But I don't know of one, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and some concessions and a bar.
Concessions for sure. There'll be a second. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention the bar.
Yeah.
There'll be a bar that kind of is behind the marquee, essentially overlooking the square.
Yeah.
So if anyone's been to Pascal's in town, similar. Pascal's is a little bigger, actually. It's
Yeah.
it's a kind of a little tiny box bar that I think is going to be kind of popular because it's kind of,
Yeah.
where else can you sit behind a marquee and look on Sand Square? It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. So that'll be fitted up there, and then full concession when you walk in the doors.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if we should tell people what the entrance is going to be. There's going to be a little surprise in the entrance that we're currently working on that Brad knows about.
Yeah.
I would like to leave
Easter
that
egg.
for
Yeah,
later.
Yeah. We'll leave that for later. Well, man, and I love the way, again, I know coming out of the Texas Theater in Dallas, it's like this is what's worked here. So
Yeah.
let's bring it up here, but it doesn't mean that it's going to mirror that exactly, right?
No.
It's just Denton
In
made-
theory, yeah, it would mirror the idea of it,
Right.
which is that we are a home for the community
Right.
and we do lots of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like other than that.
But the exact shows maybe.
I mean, occasionally I think the cool thing that Denton people should be excited about this theater is, like, if you think of a touring act coming through to our place, we can now say, hey, comedian X, you can go to Denton now too.
Yeah.
So I think for the comedy scene in Denton, it's going to be wild
All right.
because there's going to be so many. It's going to be this is really dorky for me, but for the type of venue that it is, I'm a big venue dork. So the type of size it is a perfect room for comedy.
Mhm.
So I think comedians are going to really want to come.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, how do you see fine arts kind of fitting into the broader downtown ecosystem? I mean, what do you think it's going to do for the square, the businesses
Yeah.
around downtown? I mean,
I think it's going to maybe, I don't want to overstate what it can do, but what I've seen in other communities in Texas Theater on Jefferson is that, first and foremost, it weaves itself into the existing community.
Mhm.
There was a concern, for instance, in Texas Theater that we somehow might represent some wave of new gentrification or something.
Yeah.
And I had lots of meetings with community leaders when we first started the business to ensure them our whole main goal is to integrate ourselves into what it exists about the community and be complementary to it. So I think that's first. It's going to be complementary to what already exists in Denton. It's not looking to say, get out of our way, old Denton, like we're the new guy. Like it's just not our frame of reference. So I think whatever has been existing in Denton, I think it amplifies that because a lot of what you already see in Denton, other events and, farmers markets or whatever is happening on the square.
Right.
It may not seem related to a theater, but it kind of becomes that way because it's just activity.
Yeah.
So you start to see people think, oh, well, I'm doing this, bar crawl over here. What if we do a thing over there that relates to that thing over there? Like you can kind of curate a whole system if you want to, and what I've been doing is meeting with bookers and promoters and people that do stuff and kind of showing them that possibility. Right. And saying, just because you work at another, you work at Rubber Gloves, Chadwick at Rubber Gloves, one of the first people I talked to said, hey, this is happening. Just so you know, talk to other venue owners and say, this is how it's going to collaborate with what you guys already do. You have a band coming through town. You guys want to do something? Well, we can do something that offsets that in a complementary way the night before, the night after, during, something that collaborates with, with what you're doing. So I think that X factor, I don't want to overstate what it will be, but I know it will exist. Yeah. I'm optimistic that it will be exciting in that one aspect. I'm hoping that young people that are around here that are thinking about that sticky Denton thing, start a restaurant, start another business. Like that's what we've seen 15 years in Texas theater is a whole community now of people that feel like we're part of something in their entertainment world and they want to do something, like Dallas Zine Fest or something where it's like, okay, I'm doing this thing at home. What if I did it in a larger sense and use the theater as a springboard? I would love to see 20-somethings come out of UNT or TWU and say like, you know what, I think this is cool. And I kind of feel like I want to stick around this area. What if I did a little, taco shop around the corner, whatever it is, it doesn't seem like it's totally related, but there's a reason why these theaters were always on the square of these communities because they were a focal point. Yeah.
Kind of an anchor. Yeah. Draw. Basically, I feel like that's one of the great things about it is just such a draw. And then people don't come and just say, I'm going to come to, some might, but a lot of people don't come and say, I'm going to this show and then I'm headed out. Like, what else is around here? Oh, let me discover this or let me check this out while I'm here.
That's one of the main, you've heard me say this for years now. Obviously Denton is the target to make them happy and make them interested. But I have been thinking a lot about the communities outside of Denton. Yeah. That would want to see Denton. It's not that one theater is going to be the whole reason they come, but we've seen this in Oak Cliff. Like, you just got to give a handful of things to get people to go, man, have you seen what's going on in Denton right now? Like there could be, let's gather the family and go in the afternoon and maybe stick it out and see something at night. I mean, we did that Halloween Town screening this past October. And, what you guys have done in Denton for Halloween is a great example of like, the city just says, hey, we're going to support this. Community says, well, I could do stuff. Yeah. And suddenly you have this kind of very fungible thing that is kind of throughout the whole community. And it brings people in from Sanger or Pilot Point or, places that are not, the whole like, will people from Dallas come up to Denton or Fort Worth, all that Golden Triangle stuff. It's like, sure, that's part of it too. But there's a whole mess of people, that are in a between, 50, 60 mile radius that like, I'm thinking about, hey, can I get that dude that works the oil rigs like to come in to see a genre film on a Friday and he hasn't been in a theater for a decade? Yeah. Like, but he's like, I gotta see this, like I like getting people off the couch, like it's a little bit of a competitive, it's fun to set that bar. Like, let's get that guy that's cynical to break him down and get him off the couch.
I feel that. Well, if you can get my oldest brother in for a show, you've really accomplished
something. Do you know the last movie you've seen? Does he ever even watch a movie?
I mean, this might have probably, back at like Back to the Future or something,
we do that.
Yeah, let's go.
And we bring the car. Okay. We bring the actual car.
There you go.
I like to think at some point, we do say that at Texas Theater a lot, like at some point, we're gonna show something that you're like, I gotta see.
I gotta go.
It's because it's not about new movies.
Yeah.
It's about being with your tribe of whatever your
Right.
thing is. So, Back to the Future is kind of one of them.
Yeah.
I don't care how mainstream the movie is. Seeing a movie with other people that like that movie is fun.
Yeah.
Well, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. But at some point, we're going to do something that's going to make you go, well, I got to see that comedian.
With all the AI stuff going on, we got to sit down and watch Terminator again, right? I mean, man, okay, might happen.
Not only that, but I think I don't want to overstate that either. But in the world that's AI talk, the business of being in human capital,
right,
is like that's the one.
That's
so. I'm not going to say we're stopping AI from anything, but I just don't believe people only will look at their phones all day long. I don't see the evidence of that from the customers that we have now, and they're getting younger. So I don't see this like youth only looks at the phone thing. I see the opposite.
No, we're wired to be connected and for connection, and so we're gonna seek that out, and this is, I think, gonna be a great venue to do it. So you're thinking later this summer?
We're hoping that we've said this publicly. We're hoping that we can open with the Odyssey on 70 millimeter, and a bunch of other events.
Oh my!
And even if so people may look that up and say, well, that opens in July. I understand that, but it doesn't mean by the time we open, people will be done with that movie.
Right.
Because if you think of something like that happened recently with Sinners stayed in the theater for a long time, on 70 specifically. Yeah. So I can't state this enough. The fact that it's going to have 70 millimeter is going to be a huge draw for people that are into cinema culture from this whole region. Because there's not that many theaters in the country that have 70 millimeter projection of this type. So even if it's not the opening day of Odyssey, we're still going to show 70s, and we're still going to show recurring 70s on like kind of a monthly basis. So I think, and I hope, fingers crossed, I think August will be open.
Okay. Well, don't go see the Odyssey before August.
Just wait.
Yeah, just wait until
you can do
August.
It. Read the book first.
That's right. All right. Well, this has been great. I got to hit you with a few things.
Sure.
You've obviously lived here and you've been around Denton enough. So what's kind of right now? I want to go back to when you were living here, and then maybe now some favorite hot spots. Maybe there was some back in the day that aren't here now, but
in the old days, 15 years ago, my wife, we lived in front of Mr. Chopsticks.
Okay.
This is a debate in our household, but my wife is one of the acolytes of Mr. Chopsticks. Yeah. So she loved Mr. Chopsticks, even though, I was one of those people that, like, when you smell Mr. Chopsticks every day of your life, because you live there, you're like, I've had enough of that smell. But, we were like everybody else going to Fry Street when I lived here. When I first came here, there was a record store called Johnny Law that I was adored. And there was a lot. I got so lucky when I moved here. Because the first couple of weeks, I met everyone that I would end up needing to know from Rubber Gloves and places like that. So Rubber Gloves is a very special place in my heart. A very dear friend of mine started it back when it was his house.
Yeah.
And many of those people in that circle became friends of mine when I was playing in bands and things like that. And then I lived on Egan when I first moved here, and I lived next door to several musicians that people might know from like Centromatic and other bands like that, and Chris Flemons from Baptist Generals that I ended up playing with. I lived in the same street as he did, but Dan Mojica was a few doors down. I met him right away. So Dan's original bar off the square, I adored that bar.
Yeah. Where was that?
It was, what is it now? It was in front of where Haley's was. I can't think of, it was Dusty's for a while.
Oh, it's Dusty's. Yeah.
It's kind of close to where we are.
Yeah, that's right. It's Dusty's. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first came to Denton in the late 90s, Dan's was my favorite place to see a show. If you could get in that live room, we had a half moon shell of theater seats.
Yeah.
It was a small venue, but an incredible place to see a show.
Okay.
I saw the first Polyphonic Spree show ever there.
Wow.
And that's a big band to see there. But it was just a great venue to see shows at. So when he opened the Silverleaf, Dan's places just have a special, Dan's bar on a Sunday afternoon, I just don't think you can beat it. Okay. Like, I think hanging out there when the weather's nice on the patio, it's pretty awesome.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, you may have hit it with the show you just mentioned, but of all the shows you've seen in Denton, is there one or two that stand out to you?
I mean, God, I saw so many. At Rubber Gloves, I saw an embarrassment of bands on their first tour.
Mm-hmm.
So there's huge band. There's like a band called TV on the Radio. So TV on the Radio played in Rubber Gloves to about 5 people, and I was one of them. You know, the Arcade Fire played at Haley's to 10 people. You know, like those shows are kind of wild to me in retrospect. There's a band called Animal Collector that played to no one. I saw so many of those. I did sound for, what was the name of that band? My Morning Jacket.
Okay.
To no one. I mean, there was no one there. And that band was filling stadiums like a year later.
Yeah.
So my time doing sound at Rubber Gloves, I just saw so many incredible shows there. If you're into the punk rock universe and kind of the avant-garde stuff,
yeah,
I just saw an incredible amount of shows there. They were jaw-dropping, and it felt like the best secret. And it always felt like it was CBGBs of Texas. Mm-hmm. Like it really felt like something really special. So I don't know. TV on the Radio, that Animal Collective and My Morning Jacket, those are pretty wild. I saw band Centromatic was one of my favorite bands ever. He was my neighbor. Will Johnson's brilliant. He plays with Jason Bill now. Mm-hmm. I saw the classic Denton bands like that just over and over and over. My buddy's band Mandarin, seeing them was like religious for us. Yeah. You know, so I could bore you with many, many bands.
No, that's cool.
You know?
Well, for me, it was when Pearl Jam came through Denton and they played it.
Where was that?
Yeah, it was like 94. They played the Super Pit.
No
I think it was
kidding.
93 or 94.
Wow.
Before they were playing, I mean, maybe it just wasn't the thing to play the really large stadiums then, but it was cool.
Man.
You know, I mean, it wasn't downtown. It wasn't as an intimate show as what you're describing, but to have Pearl Jam come to Denton and play at the Super Pit, that was pretty cool.
So where's the Super Pit then?
On campus there, UNT's campus.
Oh, I didn't even know it was called that.
Yeah.
So, because I know Wilco played at the school. I don't think it's called the Super Pit.
Yeah.
But I don't know what those venues are called at the school. I know there's some nice
the basketball arena is referred to as the Super Pit. The Pit.
They played in a basketball arena at UNT? That's wild.
Yeah. It was a great show.
That's super cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, all my guests get a hat from Norman Roscoe, so you get to pick your.
Well, as you can see, I wear black on black, so everyone knows which one I'm taking. Thank you, Eric.
Yes.
Norman Roscoe. Shout out to Norman Roscoe.
Oh man. Well, thanks, Jason, for joining me and spending the time.
Of course.
Talking. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope that this gives people a little more, just builds the anticipation, excitement even more.
It is my pleasure. It's really much thanks to you. This is happening. So
okay.
Anytime you want to chat about, I'm happy to chat.
we'll chat some more for sure. Well, if you didn't know Jason Reimer and what's going on with Fine Arts Theater, now you know. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.